Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the TV Pilot's License with service to Ystad, Sweden. We ask that you please fasten your headphones, secure your podcasting device, and remember, when we land in Sweden, you might notice everyone has a British accent. Don't worry about that. We are definitely in Sweden, no doubt about it.
Welcome to the TV Pilot's License. My name is Jeff Kurbis, joined by Max Singer and Rich Inman. How are you boys doing today?
Oh, mamma mia, here we go again.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, there we go. That's that Swedish accent I was looking for.
It reminded me that I can't remember what two cities this was, but I think it was like someone in Cleveland, like living by the airport, spray painted "Welcome to Milwaukee" on top of their house. So planes coming and landing in Cleveland think they're on the wrong plane.
So that's actually, it's really funny that it's about Milwaukee, because one time in my life I had a connection in Milwaukee, and I literally landed, and then I didn't know where I was. I was just like, I know I need to go to Florida. And I was like, hey, what airport are we in? And the woman was like, Green Bay, you dumb fuck. We're in Milwaukee.
Hey, what happened to Midwestern Nice? What's going on here?
People in Milwaukee are pissed. I'm just going to say that it's the quiet part out loud. Well, boys, this week we are actually going to Sweden. We are going to Sweden to talk about the series of Wallander.
For everyone listening at home, don't worry. I have managed to keep Jeff to one Loki reference and Max to one Swedish Chef reference.
The joke's on you, Rich. I'm going to be talking about Dune 2 this entire podcast.
And Rich, that's fine with me. That's okie dokie.
There we go. Well, Max, can you tell folks what this podcast is all about?
Here at TV Pilot's License, we break down and analyze the pilot episodes of some of TV's most famous, or in some cases, infamous shows. We learn a little bit more about how these shows were made and came to be, if they're effective pilot episodes and making us want to watch more, and if we think they can be made today. Go back and stream our other episodes from wherever you get podcasts. Check us out on YouTube, TikTok, and more to see our smiling faces. And if it is your first time flying with us, then welcome aboard.
Yeah, and share the podcast with your friends. Go do it. Go do it right now. Pause the episode. Go do it right now. Share it to 100 friends.
If you share with 100 people, then they share with 100 people, and then they share with 100 people.
And then all the people will reach from the surface of the earth to around the moon and back, right?
So what I will just say, if you want to share it with 100 people and you don't know 100 people, get to know 100 people. That way, get out of your house. Lose a little bit of social anxiety.
Jesus.
Well, Rich,
why are you just addressing me right now?
Well, Rich, sometimes you come in with something a little bit extra. You pre-shared your question of the week with us this week. So why don't you let the audience in on what that is?
Yep, sometimes I bring this question. So the question of the week is, you're murdered. Oh no. Who is the detective from TV that you want solving your case? Or detective from any media, I guess. But yeah, you guys have had a minute to think on this.
Max, I'm curious, who is your TV detective?
Oh, this was easy for me. I am going with the Will Arnett character, Terry Seattle, from the Netflix series Murderville.
Good job.
Oh my God, I love that show so much. Oh my God.
Yeah, that was an easy choice for me. Terry Seattle is solving
Who
my
is
case.
your celebrity guest detective?
John Hamm.
Okay, wow. I like it. What about you, Jeff?
So there's a couple of choices, and the first one that instantly came up to my mind is Mr. Monk. Mr. Monk, I know, is going to do a great job. People can have a few laughs about it along the way. But then, I got to thinking about our show. We are a podcast. It would only be appropriate if there was a podcast talking about my death. So I thought about Only Murders in the Building and Charles Hayden Savage, Oliver Putnam, and Mabel Mora all having a podcast, solving a murder, hijinks ensue, and who doesn't love Steve Martin and Martin Short?
And who doesn't know a 31-year-old Hispanic woman named Mabel?
Yeah, exactly. Rich, I'm curious about you. Who is solving your murder?
Oh, super easy. Detective Pikachu.
Oh, hell yeah.
I think Pikachu would do a great job. And also, even if they didn't, they would be really adorable doing it. And who cares? I'm dead. I don't need anyone to solve my murder. That's for y'all.
There you go. That's how it works. So, Rich, thank you for your question of the week. Let's dive a little bit more into Wallander. For folks who are listening, who are curious about what version of this show to watch, just as a heads up, we are talking about the BBC version of the show, which you can actually find on Peacock if you want to watch before you listen. But,
yeah, I know this is a real millennial podcast, so look for the one that's starring Gilderoy Lockhart from Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. That's the Wallander that we're doing.
Also, because millennials are broke, it's the one that didn't cost us $3.99 on Amazon.
Yes. Well, let's talk a little bit more about Wallander with a quick synopsis. Kurt Wallander, a middle-aged man.
His name's Kurt.
Yeah, dog. It's Sweden.
Struggles with violence in the backwaters of Ystad, Sweden. Nothing about that this man happens to be a detective.
Let me tell you about them backwaters of southeast Sweden. I do tell you what, now my name is Kurt Wallander.
All right, so before we even
That's not
dive
Hercule Poirot at all.
If Kurt Wallander had a backwaters Louisiana, Creole accent, would you recommend this show to everyone without even watching a second of it?
That's just Knives Out.
I do now, that is on my, things I want to see before I die. I do want to see Mr. Kenneth Branagh do his version of Knives Out. Because he's...
Hold on a second. Yeah. What was his voice like in Wild Wild West? Because he was the antagonist. He was the professor in Wild Wild West. Who was the evil guy in Wild Wild West. The guy with the giant mechanical spider.
Get into this. I think what we're getting onto here is that we need an American equivalent of Kenneth Branagh, someone who is like one of the most acclaimed Shakespearean actors of his generation. Does these heavy BBC drama series like Wallander, but then also puts on his little tiny mustache and does his little Agatha Christie mysteries, can direct a Cinderella movie, can be in Harry Potter, can play a goofy steampunk cowboy villain. Like, do we have an American Kenneth Branagh who just can't say no to anything, but is also an incredible actor?
I never thought I was going to have two Wild Wild West references in this podcast, but is it Kevin Kline? Is Kevin Kline our equivalent of Kenneth Branagh?
I don't think he's doing enough big stuff. Like, I don't know. Like, I think Bradley Cooper wants to be Kenneth Branagh, but then he has to keep playing a talking raccoon.
I mean, he's a great talking raccoon.
He dug his own grave with that one.
That's such a good question. Like, I genuinely, who could it be? Tom Hanks? Is that too obvious of an answer for all of us?
I can't think of anyone I haven't watched a Shakespeare movie in years. I know Kenneth Branagh played Macbeth twice, 2 times.
Actually, no, that's the dumb. Why? Denzel Washington. Washington is our Kenneth Branagh. We just need him doing.
What was the last silly thing you saw him in?
That's the thing.
Okay.
More silly. We need Denzel to, do.
Does Denzel direct though?
Yeah, Denzel directed. I think it's called the play Fences. Was that he directed that movie? The movie version of the play Fences.
He did direct that. Yeah.
So yeah, Denzel Washington.
I think.
We need you, Denzel. I know, big fan of the pod. I know we're on a first name basis. So
Big
great
D.
to be. Look out for my call soon. We need to catch up. But I am calling on you to do more silly shit. Do an animated movie. Just do a movie where you pull an Eddie Murphy and play 10 different characters, and one's in a fat suit.
Don't wish Norbit on anyone.
Wouldn't you want to watch Denzel Washington's Norbit, though? Like, that's also something that I need to see in my life. Denzel.
There is a show coming out on HBO later this year that's about, like, post-Vietnam War espionage. That's basically Robert Downey Jr. doing Nutty Professor 2, The Clumps, and I cannot wait for it.
Before we get into how this got made, a quick word from our sponsor.
Movies are back, baby. Oh, they are so back. Tom Cruise told me so himself. If you want reviews and recaps of movies, but not just any movies, specifically sequels, then check out the Electric Boogaloo podcast with Scott Kelly and Brad Waterman. Scott and Brad are expert cinephiles who've been watching movies together since they were kids, and with the Electric Boogaloo, they're diving into your favorite sequels. There's plenty of podcasts that will revisit Jurassic Park, but only one willing to give the people, aka me, what they want and discuss Jurassic Park 3 in depth, and that's the Electric Boogaloo. Be sure to check out their monthly Baby Boogaloo episodes too. That's TOO, not TWO. I had to clarify since we're talking sequels here, for top 5 lists and so much more. Subscribe today for new episodes every Thursday. That's the Electric Boogaloo with Scott and Brad.
All right, well, to get us back on track out of the backwaters of Louisiana, somehow to Denzel Washington, Max, do you mind telling us how this was made?
So today we are talking about the premiere of the BBC's Wallander titled Sidetracked, which originally aired on November 30th, 2008. You can stream it through BBC, Peacock, if you do want to check it out before you watch this. And we're going to be talking a little bit about the actual Wallander novel's creator, the author Henning Mankell. It's going to be a lot of Swedish names today, folks. Please bear with us. So, Swedish author and playwright Henning Mankell is one of the country's best-known 20th century authors, whose works cover everything from the Swedish labor movement to Swedish colonialism. But it was in 1991, already in his 40s, that Mankell achieved international success with the release of his first Kurt Wallander mystery novel. The series stems 13 books, with the first English release coming in 1997. The episode we are covering today is actually based on the 5th book in the Wallander series. So if you want to go and find an adult mystery, series to occupy your time, we're covering book 5 today. So the first version of Wallander for TV actually was in 1994. The second version of Wallander was a trilogy of theatrically released films in Sweden before transitioning to a direct-to-DVD model with all original plots by Mankell. But this version is probably the most well-known, the most universally beloved. So ahead of the Swedish film series, Mankell founds the production company Yellow Bird, which also produces a variety of notable Swedish crime dramas for the big screen, including the original version of Stieg Larsson's Millennium Trilogy, the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo novels, Liza Markland's Annika Bengtsson series, and Joe Nesbo's Headhunters, which became the highest-grossing film in the history of Norwegian cinema. Nesbo also wrote the Harry Hoult detective series, which you may remember from that just god-awful Michael Fassbender film, The Snowman, that came out a couple years ago.
Also...
you could have saved her, Mr. Policeman. I gave you all the clues.
There's also a member of that movie in this show, and I can't wait to bring that connection out.
God, the Snowman is one of the worst crime thrillers I have ever seen.
I don't know what you're talking about. It is a cinematic masterpiece. There's nothing wrong with that movie, including, how the crime was solved, the cast.
The fact that American audiences didn't want to pronounce the last name Hoult and it became Harry Hole. What could go wrong?
Oh, no. Oh, no.
So, back to Henning Mankell.
God, TikTok would love that.
Mankell seeks to do an English language version of the Wallander series with the BBC, already in negotiations to adapt another one of his novels. Actors who met with Mankell to circle the role of Kurt Wallander included Clive Owen, Jason Isaacs, and an older consideration of Michael Gambon. Kenneth Branagh actually appreciated Mankell at a film festival honoring Ingrid Bergman, earned Mankell's approval, and soon after a 3-episode series was commissioned, which by BBC standards is like a 26-episode season. 3 episodes on the BBC is like season 1 of the OC in America. It's as long as you could possibly do. And then just one little fun fact for today's episode. The cinematographer behind Wallander is Anthony Dodd Mantle, which is a name that you may not be familiar with. But the same year that Wallander was released, his other film, Slumdog Millionaire, that he was the DP, came out,
shit.
and he won his Academy Award for Slumdog the same year as this episode.
Oh, shit.
That is, talk about being on top of the fucking world. Are you
That's
kidding
a big
me?
year.
That's amazing. Well, Max, thank you for, telling us a little bit about how this got made. Let's talk about Wallander. And, we sort of make jokes about the idea that this entire cast, for the most part, speaks in a British accent. Other than one character I'll talk about later in this show.
It's not just that they speak in a British accent. It's just so funny to me that every time they show documents or newspapers in Wallander, they're entirely in Swedish, but everyone just talks in British, royal accents.
Well, Jeff, that's actually how they talk there, too. I don't know if you've heard an ABBA song recently, but none of them have accents.
Well, and Jeff, you also said we learned how this got made. It's Swedish, so it got made with a tiny Allen wrench.
Son of a bitch.
Oh, you motherfucker. There goes the IKEA sponsorship.
Damn it.
But
What are you talking about? They just signed on for 10 more episodes now.
Oh my god. Well, let's talk about this opening scene, because I think this does such an amazing job of setting the tone of this show. We're recording this after doing #1 Ladies Detective Agency. This bright, happy show that, there was one dark scene in that entire show, and that seemed off. This show starts off in one of the most beautiful fields of yellow crops I've ever seen, and then a woman takes a tank of gasoline, pours it on herself, and then kills herself because a man says, "I'm with the police." Holy shit, I was in immedietly. Max?
Don't forget, too, that we also get the very first line of this show being Wallander. which tickled me up until the woman set herself on fire.
Yeah, I mean, again, shout out to Academy Award winner Anthony Dodd Mantle for filming the most beautiful self-immolation sequence I've ever seen on TV. If you're wondering why we're really playing it fast and loose today, this is maybe the most dour show we've done.
Yeah.
This show is straight up, everyone is sad, and there are a couple of very funny moments in this pilot. I don't know if they were intentional, but there were some moments of this pilot that I literally was just cackling to myself.
Rich, I do agree with you. It's very funny that the first time we see him, he just holds up a police badge and says Wallander, and everyone reacts. They all look around.
That should have been the CSI Miami. Yeah! moment.
Not to mention, Kurt Wallander pulls up in the Volvo station wagon to let you know that we're in Sweden. We're setting the world.
We have a saying in Sweden: if you don't laugh, you will cry. So we need to keep doing this. This is so dark. This is so insanely dark.
Yeah, you'll cry and you'll find yourself with 3 or 4 extra screws unexplainably. So let's talk
if your first exposure to Wallander is this podcast, boy, are we not setting the tone for you.
So let's talk a little bit more about this detective, because we not only did Kurt just witness a traumatic suicide in front of him in this. As Max said, this is shot so beautifully. Some of these scenes are so striking. But we learn a little bit more about his background through clues, almost, and how appropriate for our mystery show. Kurt's definitely an alcoholic. Straight up, alcoholism is his favorite hobby. Additionally, Kurt also has a adult daughter and is estranged from his wife, and it seems almost fairly recently as well. What were some of the other things that you guys learned about Kurt or picked up in these intro sequences as we're trying to solve this murder?
I'm not a parent, but if my adult daughter ever called me complete crap, I just don't know if I could recover from it.
Also, they had the funniest scene together of them of like, okay, so they start talking about how how Kurt needs to go visit his own dad who is suffering from dementia, and the way that she just says it's really hard to love your father, or it's really hard to get to know or love your father. I can't remember what the exact line is, and then looks at him and then immediately cracks a smile. I'm like, this is going to be the only moment of levity we get for 90 minutes. It was really nice and charming. But I will say too, and I didn't want to get into this too soon in the episode, but you don't learn a lot about Kurt Wallander at all in this episode. There's so many things happening with the case.
It's super interesting you say that, because I think that this is a show that relies on a very strong cast surrounding Kenneth Branagh to do the legwork of learning about things about Kurt.
Yeah.
Like, towards the end, we learn a lot about him in a very short amount of time, which was like almost off-putting, because I was like, I thought we were just going to sort of have this blank canvas man. But yeah, like, Max, what's on your mind with Mr. Kurt?
I have a question, and it's less for you two, but more for the entire population of Sweden, if you're listening right now.
I have them on the line right now.
Yeah.
Are you okay? Just collectively?
Because no.
all you do is produce electronic dance music and really, really dark, morose crime dramas. Like, all you do is produce the most violent crime dramas I have ever read and ever seen, and the most upbeat, euphoric dance music. Is everything okay? Do you need more sunlight? Have you considered moving somewhere where there's not darkness for 22 hours a day for months on end?
Max, as the man who lives in the climate and culture that is most like Sweden, aka Minnesota.
You do live in American Sweden, yes.
Where we also have darkness and
the pop music is amazing.
And the pop music is amazing, R.I.P. Prince. But I would say this tracks hardcore. There is something called Minnesota Nice in Minnesota, where it is, people are polite, just like people in Sweden are very polite, but no one's coming up to you and giving you that good old Midwestern harm and hug and hospitality in comparison. And I was just like, yep, I could just imagine. We talked a little bit about, like, what if this was in Louisiana? What if everyone just said "ope" after every 5 words? Like, that, I felt very at home seeing everyone just drinking themselves to death. And also, like, in darkness and like that slight tint of gray that was in many of the scenes that we watched.
Well, you mentioned, obviously, Wallander being a pretty hard drinker. It's a thing that we see throughout this episode as well. The first time that he goes home after doing a hard day of detectiving, his drink of choice that he sits down to unwind with is none other than Sweden's finest boxed wine that he pours himself a glass of. This is not, Murder on the Orient Express, Death on the Nile, Hercule Poirot, Kenneth Branagh sipping on, enough champagne to fill the Nile. This is boxed wine. He is down bad.
Max, it has to be that shape, otherwise it won't fit on the IKEA shelves properly.
So let's move forward a little bit more now that we know our protagonist.
I was thinking the same thing. I'm so sorry. I'm going to apologize to anyone Swedish listening to this.
I'm going to double down.
Yeah, Denmark rules. Suck it.
Yeah, oh my God. Let's talk a little bit more about what we start to see next. We get to meet Wallander's team. And if you are watching this show, you are going to recognize one of these team members instantly, not from this show, but as
Sarah Smart.
as that mischievous trickster god from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, aka Loki, aka
That's your one.
Tom Hiddleston. I get one more Marvel mention in this show.
All right, fine.
But I was tickled pink seeing Tom Hiddleston in a very different role than what we've seen him doing recently, right? This is the questioning member of the police force. This, like, almost, I don't want to say a jackass because we're used to seeing him being a jackass, but it was just interesting seeing Hiddleston do a role that's just unlike what we've gotten used to nowadays.
It's also worth mentioning that the first Thor feature was directed by Kenneth Branagh.
Yes, it was.
Like every single time they're having these one-on-one conversations, do you think he's just like sizing up Tom Hiddleston, being like, "Yep, this guy could do it"?
I wonder if he had some say in the casting for it too, because that's like you see Tom Hiddleston in this, and he is like a child. He is like maybe 21, 22 in this, or just really good makeup, but he looks very like young and green in this, and he doesn't look like a detective at all. But he also like massive glow up in all of 3 or 2 years, really, because that's when they filmed it to Loki.
Well, Hiddleston is 27 in Wallander.
Oh wow, yeah, he looks like an absolute baby.
Two things that I'll say. One, if I told you two that Hiddleston originally auditioned for the part of Thor, now knowing that Chris Hemsworth is that character.
That's so fucking funny. That's so fucking funny. Oh my god, that's like me auditioning for Denzel Washington. That is like
they wrap a day. They wrap a day of shooting on Wallander. Kenneth Branagh sees the tape of Tom Hiddleston auditioning for Thor. He's like, "No, bullshit. No, can't do it."
we literally have images from Nordic like religions for what a Thor looks like. I can't believe they thought that would be a good idea.
But also, like, I now associate Hiddleston with a very specific haircut, right? Like, I'm not even talking about his Loki hair. I was not expecting the Jew-esque fro that I was seeing from this man, and I don't know if I took him as seriously as I was supposed to in the show because of it.
He still went by Tom Hiddleston.
Son of a bitch.
You asshole.
I would have went with Hiddleston, but I like it.
So let's talk about our main case of the week, or what appears to be our main case of the week, because we sort of, I don't want to underplay that this suicide, this mystery of why this woman committed suicide.
Jeff, I'm gonna put your mind at ease right now. It wasn't real.
Yeah, that's really helpful.
It's TV. And now that we're in like episode 70 whatever of this show, it's good to remind Jeff every now and then that TV isn't real.
Yeah, they yelled cut. She went to craft services afterwards. She got a nice snack. It's all okay.
She complained that her burger was overcooked.
Oh my god. Let's talk about our main crime of the week, right? We see this man who used to be a government official watching almost an interview of himself that was obviously pre-recorded. And then we see that man then get not only stabbed in the head with an axe in a very violent moment, we come to then find out that he has been scalped, which is also insane. And this is sort of kicks off our show in a second kickoff. We've met our character, but now we've met our murderer.
I know that investigating the murder of Minister of Justice Wetterstedt, in that this is not the takeaway, but I love the architecture and design of his house when they're investigating the scene of the murder. The entire time they're like, the body was found scalped on the docks. I'm like, his kitchen is
so sick. Okay, this is probably the most millennial we're gonna get on this podcast. Is 3 people gushing over people's houses.
I understand like neo-Nordic design. This home is stunning. Oh, the body, yeah, no, we will get to that later. Like, who did your walls?
I want people to know that the situation for millennials in the U.S. is so dire that literally last week I called the #1 ladies detective agency office like a pretty big upgrade from where I've worked in the past.
Yeah, and if you want to get a kitchen like the one that you saw in Wallander, why not visit IKEA? IKEA, we like you enough.
Murdered and scalped Swedish government minister. Big deal, right?
Yeah, normally.
I do like that we get this murder, and then fairly quickly we start to get rolling. We're seeing Wallander be an expert, because this show, unlike #1 detective, ladies agency, or a lot of the mysteries or the murder mysteries that we've done, it takes some time to establish that Wallander's good at his job, or like is knowledgeable. But we also establish that he goes through back channels to be able to learn about what is going on via a delightful drunk at a local bar who he starts questioning. And this man happens to have been a journalist, or a fairly
our main
prominent
man,
journalist.
Lars Magnuson.
Yeah, Lars is a character, but I also appreciate this character in many ways.
Point of Wallander being good at his job, there's two things that come up a couple times in this pilot. One, whenever he mentions that he's police from Ystad, which is, for those at home who want to know where this is, it's southern coast of Sweden. The nearest major city is Malmo. Now you have an idea about where we are in the country. Everyone kind of discredits him for being a small town police. At one point, he says he's police from Ystad, and someone like writes him off as be like, "Oh, like is there like a cat that got lost or something?" So it's like clearly people don't believe that he's up to the task despite his credentials. And also, early on, Tom Hiddleston tries to write off these events as not being related, just saying that the 15-year-old girl's death in the field is just an awful tragedy, and that Wallander's trying to like draw too many connections. He's trying to find too many threads. Like he's going in too deep on things that are just gruesome, tragic events. And I think it's important that like you have to see him willing to push beyond that and not just say, yeah, you know, everyone else thinks that it's just tragedies, you know, well, I don't. And so I'm going to keep pushing and like following my instinct here.
Mm-hmm. And I will say too, I think maybe I just need too much stimulation in a detective show that I'm watching, because like obviously I loved watching Monk when I was younger, because you know there are a lot of moments of levity. There's a lot of like visual aids to like show how good of a detective he is. It's the same thing with Sherlock. There's a ton of like, you know, after effects, like stuff that like circles around his head when he's thinking of stuff. Like you don't get any like excitement about Wallander's skills until basically the end of the episode. And I don't know if that's like maybe people in Europe just need less of a hero worship kind of aspect to this, instead of just like, oh, what a crazy crime, we got to solve this. Or maybe things are just so violent in the US that this is like, oh my God, multiple people are getting shot to bits. Like,
but I think you're right. It really is like an hour of just Wally going down the rabbit hole before we finally start to tie things together. But I think it's like, it's him pushing that is the interesting thing, that is stimulating. It's watching, you know, the spider web forming. It's seeing the connections. It's trying to figure out how does all this relate, where the stimulation comes from.
Mm-hmm. One of the things I think this show prides itself on is the performances, as opposed to a gripping a storyline that just has you from the moment you start to the all the way to the end. Because if we look at it, right, hey, there's a series of murders of socialites and wealthy, prestigious people of Sweden. On that face value versus, like Rich, as you said, Monk case of the week, missing, you know, someone lost their dog and also there was a murder. How are they connected? Like, of the two of those, I have a proclivity of watching one of them, and it's the happier one. But all of the performances in this show are really fantastic. Like, let's just give an example and move to our next murder victim, in the sense that we see this wealthy art dealer who is also murdered brutally, same exact way. We only see flashes of this murderer in this instance, but then we get the acting of this man's daughter, who obviously is traumatized, has no trust of police, but also you can tell there's something wrong. And I was really struck by the power of this performance, even though it was only a short while, of seeing this girl who we get the clues of, oh, Wallander sees she potentially attempted suicide multiple times. Mm-hmm. But we also see this painting of the girl in a negligee that is just very predominantly in the living room of this home.
Yeah.
And that was also a moment where I was like, wow, this is very different than what we're used to in America mystery shows, but also it's refreshing, and I can tell why people like this show.
I do think there's something to be said, though, for the sudden rush of both of the first two murders we've seen in this. Things happen quickly. They happen in darkness, and they're real sleek. It's not full on slasher films. It is you see the shadow behind, you see the hatchet come at them, and then that's it. At this party, though, I was a little tickled by it being all elderly, stuffy, white upper crust folks, and they're just blasting electronic dance music in the house as well. It truly is like, are you all okay? All you could do is gripping noir and EDM, and I think I know who our killer is behind these two. It's the Swedish House Mafia.
Oh, shit. Oh, it's a crime organization.
Oh, my God. So after this murder, we get one that almost seems non-consequential at the time in a parking garage. Mm-hmm. But this is our first of the oddities of it all. And we get an introduction to a family who was involved with this murder, the Friedman family. And Rich, I'll give my one final Marvel thing. Mm-hmm. I was going to do a joke about a boy, because I love that movie a lot.
Which boy?
Nicholas Hoult. Nicholas Hoult is our boy. Nicholas Hoult is in this pilot as one of the son of our third murder victim, who was a criminal by just all words, and also domestically abused his wife and his children as well. Were you guys tickled pink by seeing Nicholas Hoult, like a young Nicholas Hoult, before he was in things like The Menu and other things as well?
God, he was such an asshole in The Menu. I really, it's just fascinating to see two would-be potential, like, maybe if not A-list, like B-list, like actors, like on the brink of blowing up. Because I don't think anything about either of their performances in this are like, oh my God, this guy, he's got it. But it is like, you do get like the nice fascination of like, watching like Clooney in ER or something like that, where it's like, you don't even know what's about to happen, dude.
Yeah, I think there's definitely something to be said for seeing someone. It's like, I think Nicholas Hoult is fantastic. I loved him in Mad Max Fury Road. I loved Hulu's The Great, a show that unfortunately got canceled too soon. I think he's great in The Menu. He's going to be playing the new Lex Luthor in the James Gunn Superman. And it's seeing his evolution into playing these like really big, over-the-top character roles is so exciting, when he's just like moody, Scandinavian, depressed teen in this.
Yeah, his character almost didn't need a name in this. Like that's how little he is part of this show, but ultimately very important. But yeah, I mean, he could just be like sad teen number one.
Oh, but man, that 2000s like indie sleaze shag haircut he has too.
Yeah, extremely popular in Sweden, obviously.
Yeah, obviously, you look at the influence of bands like The Hives and the Hives behind it.
All two of them. Yeah, it was really cool seeing him pop into this. Obviously, you do get that moment of kind of like nostalgia for someone you are only going to recognize from like movie posters for quite a while. So it is like, it's nice to see. It's like, oh yeah, I knew them when, that kind of thing.
I do want to bring us back to this case with something that I found hysterical given the time that this show came on. They bring a profiler on to the case, and I love that they just paint this man as an utter fucking moron from like the beginning. They bring him in and he's like, well, I need another murder to happen before I can make a profile. Then within like 10 minutes of showtime, we get another murder. This man sees a body that has its eyes acided out. Is
Burned
that
out
is
with
that
acid, yeah.
burned out with acid. He begins to puke
Sheesh.
to the side, and then Wallander just looks at him in a disapproving look. Genuinely just started cackling because I was like, that is one of the funniest things that you could do to show someone's bad at their
implying
job.
that the profiler is not Swedish then.
But like the profiler does give us some interesting clues of the idea of it seems like everyone here was involved with some sort of, back channel prostitution ring of sorts. They were all powerful, wealthy men. We get introduced to a guy who's just a scumbag from the beginning, and instantly you meet him and you're like, I want him to be punched in the face. But then it's interesting to see Wallander look at this Friedman family and start to focus in on, hey, there is a clue here. Their daughter seems to be someone that I need to interview, but I cannot seem to get in contact with her. I'm curious, as you guys start to see Wallander put the pieces together, do you believe in him more as a detective? Are you further incentivized to keep on watching the show? What are your thoughts?
I am, and I like that we also start off this series with like a big syndicate, and also the idea that like the call is coming from inside the house. That's a really big part of this episode, is that we start to learn that a lot of these people have criminal histories that have all been wiped clean or swept under the rug internally. And so it's like this goes all the way to the top. Wallander is fighting a corrupt system. He's this guy from this small town, and the big city may not be as glamorous as it seems. And so I think that's a really interesting angle for this show to take, that it's like Wallander is a great detective, but they're also kind of like, what if Cop's bad? Like,
Yeah.
What if Cop's bad?
They also, I think that it kind of reminds me a little bit of like a Swedish first season of True Detective almost, where they're like, yeah, we're trying to solve these murders, but also there are a lot of people trying to stand in our way. And, I have to imagine, since like that part of Europe is a lot more socialist than we are, there's probably a little bit more of a trust of police there, just because like, there's a lot of major consequences for actual police violence there.
But yeah, every single person had like major things wiped away by the police. Wennerstedt, they said, had assault charges against a woman where he cut her feet with a razor blade, and those were dismissed. The second victim, Carlman, he did hard time for, I think they said, forging checks and stealing art that he was dealing, and he had his cases like later expunged after doing time to get him back into high society. And then Fredman, Nicholas Holstad, Bjorn Fredman, he had assault charges against him that were also dropped. And you start to see that like everything kind of connects at one point.
So we start to get this connection. There's one familial connection that I want to talk about, and that is Wallander's dad. I don't think the idea of bringing him in was like, oh, we need this comedic thing. We need this dark comedy aspect. But the dad, low-key, was one of the funnier things on the show.
I said you can't say Loki again.
You motherfucker.
Max knew it immediately.
Clocked it.
I loved this actor's performance, and it was not an easy one to portray, right? You were portraying a man who is hiding his dementia from his family and does a really excellent job of doing so. But also, there was a moment where this man supposedly got in a fight at a grocery store and then proceeded to look at his son, who's at the police station, while he's in lockup, and say, I wanted to visit you at work, which is just a hell of a joke. And I was just cackling.
Great. And then from that scene, Wallander and his father getting into it about hiding secrets and being estranged and it's really the first time we see Wallander lose his cool and like kind of lose like that stoic Nordic behavior we've come to, grow and appreciate from the Swedes. And after he blows up, his dad just asks him, "So who'd I punch?"
He also, Wallander, then Kenneth Branagh had one joke, and it was to his dad, who says, "Hey, I've known I've had dementia for months," and he said, "Did you think you were gonna beat it?" Like, which is also just like, I know it wasn't.
I can't tell if that's Swedish or if that's like Kenneth Branagh. I assume is Scottish based on his last name, right?
He's Northern Irish. He did
Northern
Belfast
Irish
based on his life.
Okay, got it. Yeah, I feel like that's like intermixing a little bit of like British humor on that one, because that is fucking hysterical.
Every single time we get into understanding Wally Wallander, though, they have to do it so heavy-handed.
Wallander.
Like, there's a scene, and you mentioned this earlier, how it's like we don't really get a whole lot. It's like an hour in, and then it's like the hour mark hits, and we get this back-to-back of Wallander's dad being arrested, sitting in jail, and the reveal of him battling dementia and Alzheimer's. Following that up with him meeting with the profiler again, and all of a sudden, the profiler just reads Wallander to fucking filth and says, "Hey, I know your wife left you. You're estranged from your daughter. Your father has Alzheimer's." And it's just like, how do you know all this? An hour in, one line, massive exposition dump.
So we come to, after this exposition dump, after learning more about Wallander, we end up, we also learn that he's really good at his job. He's starting to put the pieces together, and he realizes that Nicholas Hoult's character is probably responsible for these murders because his sister was abused by her father, and her sister is played by Rebecca Ferguson. How you have Rebecca Ferguson in the show when she's very much, this is not the peak of her acting career, but she doesn't speak in this pilot at all. They literally have her silently standing there, and I'm just like, come on, Rebecca, you got it. Just give me a word. And
if any casting director would like to hire me for that type of role, I'm available.
Also,
Rich just standing there.
Dune 2 in theaters March 1st.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's one
Popcorn
of those
bucket available on our website now.
It's
Please
one of
don't
those.
Sorry,
You're fine. I'd love to talk about Popcorn Bucket TikTok with you guys because it's going nuts. But one of the things that I think that this pilot falls victim to is a lot by having that lack of buildup throughout the pilot. Everything happens really quickly at the end. It's almost, there are 8 minutes where it seems like everything that would normally happen in a TV hour happens in this show. We find out this is the murderer. We find our guy who's going to probably be the next victim of this murderer. And then we're going to go through the old route of human bait to catch our murderer, which is just, it's a lot. It's so much. The pacing is wildly different throughout this pilot.
Totally. This is such a European feel. Like, I know we kind of joked about American Wallander at the beginning of this, but it's like, we're just so used to, we mentioned True Detective. I think of Mayor of Easttown, these things where it's like action is constantly happening and we're seeing scenes, we're seeing cryptic happenings. And this is a lot of explaining things to you. This is a listening show. This is subtitles on, even though they're all speaking in very clear Royal British accents, because they're not going to show you a lot of things. They're going to tell you a lot of details. They're going to tell you backstories. They're going to explain how in one big dump that, Bjorn Fredman, Nick Holt's dad, was this courier who was bringing in sex workers for the rich elite parties, that there's this man, Sandin, who was a police agent who is, somehow pulling all of the strings here. It's like everything is going to be explained to you. And if you stop listening, you will lose track of where you are.
Yeah, there is an awful lot happening here. It's fascinating that in a 90-minute pilot, they still felt the need to like oh shit, we're like 75 minutes in. We better start wrapping this thing up. I'm like, oh my God, I can't imagine reading the script for that, or like having the script notes where they're like, whoa, we kind of wasted like 30 pages of like adding more to this murder. We gotta solve this. We gotta put a bow on this.
Yeah, there's 20 minutes of ABBA holograms in the middle of this.
So let's talk about the end of this pilot really quickly, because we do end up catching our murderer. One of the things that I think is so interesting that we get to have a sneak peek of is Wallander's belief in human beings to be good. Or like there's this small clue in how he wants to catch our murderer, not by force, but by convincing him, you don't have to do this. We got him. He's going to be going to prison. And then we see Wallander go through self-doubt in the largest of ways, not only in the sense of having to shoot the man that he didn't want to shoot, but also going to his father to talk through the idea of, how do I do it? How do I keep on going to this job? And this was just another instance of this actor dominating this role, giving an amazing monologue to end this show. And it's not a happy ending, right? Like there's nothing about this show that's leaving you with a smile and being like, can't wait to watch the next episode. But there is this sense of everything's going to be okay. I just need to think about things for a little bit.
Yeah, the hardest thing on this final shot for me, though, is that they use the same kind of creepy zoom in over Wallander's back shoulder that we see 3 other times in this pilot, all when people get hit in the head with hatchets.
Yeah.
And for a second, I'm like, oh shit, is Wallander going to get scalped?
One and done, baby. A pilot and same episode.
Like if you're gonna do the same track shot 3 times in a row to show people getting hatcheted and scalped, you can't do it at the end and be like, fake out.
Gotcha.
So that's the end of our pilot. We've been talking about this one for a while. I'm curious, were there any things that we didn't talk about that you loved about this pilot?
I can take this one. What the fuck is the law in Sweden? Because that girl slaps the absolute bejesus out of Kurt Wallander to the point where they had to use a Foley artist to like capture how loud that slap was going to be. If you do that to the police, you're going to jail for sure at least a month.
Definitely not an American show.
100%
in the Russian slap fighting league. She's going to dominate that league.
This woman, or this like young girl, is like, visibly like weakened by self-harm and stuff like that. Still absolutely smacks the shit out of him. And then, okay, how on earth is this legal? They use their own perp as a bait for another to like get their own criminal and then put them in a situation where they have to shoot him. They have to. There's no way if he's any good at his job that he doesn't think there's probably a pretty good chance I'm going to have to shoot this guy, because like he's extremely motivated to kill everyone. And this is Nicholas Hoult's character. And there's no chance that like this guy enacting only vengeance crimes is not going to like want to still kill this guy no matter if the police are there or not. He's okay being caught, clearly. And yeah, it's just like how on earth, like there's so many people. They put that one Sandin. They put that one Sandin guy who they use as like the bait for Nicholas Hoult to try to lure him and to kill him. They put him in so much danger that he might actually go free in the US if like he actually stands trial, because what the absolute fuck was that? I know he's an absolute monster, but whoa, that was a choice.
So Max, what about you? Any things that you loved about this pilot that maybe we didn't discuss?
It looks unlike other crime dramas I'm accustomed to. It's beautifully filmed. I love all the lens flares. I love all of the real strong close-ups. I like that there's a lot of times the weird Twilight blue filter on the screen. It's just such a uniquely filmed piece of TV that it's beautiful to look at. And the gorgeous southern Swedish landscapes and architecture also helps that.
Yeah, I mean, this is shot beautifully. There is a reason why, Slumdog Millionaire is one of the more beautiful shot movies,
Mhm.
or uniquely shot movies in the past 20 years, in all honesty. Kenneth Branagh kills it in this role. This is very different than how he plays in anything else that you've probably seen him in the past, in a long time. It's unique. It's such a refreshing show in the idea of it's not just, love me some Law and Order SVU, but sometimes you might be a sweet person. Sometimes you want a savory meal. And this is definitely very different than anything that we've watched in a while. I gotta ask, were there any wait a minute moments for you in this pilot that maybe...
I'm sorry, I went with my wait a minute moment first.
Yeah,
but also I did love a nice hard slap on a knighted Academy Award winner.
Yeah. Max, what about you, since Rich gave us his?
A 27-year-old playing our first 15-year-old murder victim.
Yes. That's insane. I also did love the farmer being like, you're gonna ruin my crops by walking in the field, and then his crops just get straight up burnt to ashes.
I feel like that's a line that sounded a lot cooler in Swedish than it did translated into English.
You're gonna ruin my croppins.
Oh my god. Well, we do have an in-flight question, and I genuinely love this one so much. And that is, this show is based out of Sweden. What's your favorite ABBA song? So I am going to ask you two to tell me, what is your favorite ABBA song that you jam out to?
I'm staying noir. I'm going to Give Me a Man After Midnight.
Oh, great choice, Rich. What about you?
God, I mean, I love Gimme, Gimme, Gimme. I would probably go Voulez-Vous if that one's off the table.
Nice.
Oh, God. See, so the problem is, and this is a window into my life, by being a group exercise fitness coach,
oh no,
I play a lot of ABBA in my classes, and variations of it, of just like, hey, sometimes it's electronic, sometimes it's the original. They all hit really, really hard. But I'm gonna say Chiquitita, or excuse me, I mispronounced that terribly, but that song fucking slaps every single time.
Okay,
oh man,
so
you know the deep cut. That's the BB sides.
Is that so? Okay, so as a fitness instructor, I want to just ask, because clearly someone at Equinox is subscribed to like a Spotify channel of the absolute worst crossovers and covers that I've ever heard in my life, to the point where I'm like hearing Led Zeppelin like slow, like Euro female vocalist with a house beat, and it's like in a minor key, and it's like you have completely you don't even have to keep the song anymore, just make an entirely different song. It is like, is there a website that you guys find the absolute worst remixes on, or because what is that?
I'm never gonna tell.
Subscribe to shitremix.com, proud sponsor of TVPL.
Also, if you don't dance to Dancing Queen, you don't have a soul. That song's a bop.
Sure.
Jeff took the personal traitor's oath. He shall never reveal his playlists.
So let's talk a little bit about the history of this show, and we'll talk about how to submit in-flight questions a little bit later. So there are 4 series of the BBC version of this show, and there are only 12 episodes of this show available. Considering that this one was 90 minutes long, that's a lot of this. From a viewership perspective, now we have to consider viewership in the UK is a lot different than viewership in the US, just based off of the nature of the size of the two countries in comparison. But in this instance, there were 6.91 million viewers at the peak of this show. That was in series 3.
That's really solid.
Series 1, episode 1, I believe it was like 6.35 million, which is also very, very solid. So one of the more interesting parts about this show is the impact that this show had. Sweden, famously, did not get many visitors from the UK. It was not like the popular place to go on a holiday.
Yeah, everyone's getting axe murdered there.
So after the show debuted, visitation from the UK went up nearly 20%.
What?
To the point where they estimated about 3% of all viewers of the show ended up going to Sweden to visit Ystad. Additionally, they also hosted a film festival for crime fiction shows and movies that was hosted by the producer of Yellowbird.
Dude,
that
you just
Max
watched
talked
someone.
about.
You just watched someone set themselves on fire in a flower field, and that's where you want to go on vacation?
It's like the people who go to Hawaii and they get the ATVs to go see where Jurassic Park was filmed. And it's like, and if you use your imagination, you could see a dinosaur.
If you use your imagination, there's a 27-year-old playing a 15-year-old in the middle of this field. And oh my God.
I mean, I guess a couple of my friends are in like Forks, Washington right now to like go on to see the set of the Twilight movie. So I guess it's not that crazy.
Twilight Fest is dope.
Oh boy.
So
yeah, just next vacation, going to see Wetterstedt's house on the water.
in honor of hard media and traditional media, there are 4 DVDs that are available for all 4 seasons series of the show. There is also Young Wallander. That's correct. There is a Netflix series called Young Wallander, and it is
he called Wally at least?
I watched the trailer for this series because I was just like, what's the tone of this? And it is I don't want to give any sneak peeks or spoil it for anyone, but imagine if Die Hard mixed with Swedish culture happened. And I have not watched more of Wallander yet, but I'm tempted to watch a lot of Young Wallander because it looks like a fucking hoot.
Closing his locker. There's a minor key version of Levels by Avicii playing in the background.
So one of the other things that I'll say is on a per episode basis, this is probably one of the most successful shows we've talked about when it comes to awards. There were 31 nominations. That includes 2 Emmy noms for its first season, a Golden Globe nom, and all of the BAFTAs, all of the BAFTA TV awards. But it ended up winning an award for every single episode that it had. It was 12 wins on 31 nominations, which is a insane hit rate.
Yeah.
That included Kenneth Branagh winning the Best Actor award in a drama series. And it was also awarded Best Drama Series that same year in the BAFTAs. So yeah, hell of a job. This is a very, very well respected show. Well enough that they, after the final season in 2012 that they did with Branagh, 7 years later, they decided to make Young Wallander. Like that just speaks to how
it's still so goddamn funny that shows that name.
Maybe if there is enough call, we'll watch one episode of Young Wallander and decide if it is as good, if not better.
I need the gritty CW reboot called Ystad.
Oh my God.
Wallander's a teenager and everyone's trying to fuck.
Well, that is that's the history of the show. Rich, what is your game of the week?
Well, I would love to give you guys some Sweden fun fact trivia and just see what your knowledge is of our Nordic friends. And first one, I guess both of you guys can go after these. I think I made them a little bit harder than the previous ones. The disco powerhouse band ABBA, who we've mentioned several times and couldn't stop mentioning, which of course is the initials of the members of the band. They had to get approval to use it though, because ABBA was also a Swedish what? A seafood company, a glue factory, a military contractor, a liquor company.
Let's go with the terrifying one in military contractor.
And I'm going to go with the less terrifying, but more terrifying location, seafood company.
It is a seafood company.
The ocean is terrifying.
If there's one thing you can take away from this podcast. Okay, second question. Because of the character's insane popularity in Sweden, the government had to legally ban writing in this character's name as a protest vote on election days. A. Popeye, B. Donald Duck, C. Mickey Mouse, D. Homer Simpson.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Kurt Wallander.
Max,
Homer Simpson.
I'm gonna go with Mickey Mouse.
It is Donald Duck. Donald Duck is so
Okay.
popular that people kept writing in its name for protest votes. All right. This country owes Volvo 300 million euros from a debt due in the 1970s, and Sweden sends an updated invoice every year, which they have still not paid.
That's petty as shit.
A. Russia. B. Somalia. C. North Korea. D. China.
Max, what are you thinking?
I'm going to say North Korea.
I am going to say Russia. Why not?
It is North Korea. North Korea ordered 1,000 Volvos from Sweden right after the Korean War finished up, and they still have not paid for them.
Holy shit, that's amazing.
And the thing is, those cars do not depreciate in value. Like, those things will last a long time. They're still driving those same Volvos.
Yeah, a million miles, baby.
Well, Rich, thank you so much for your game of the week. Our flight's coming to a land. And, two questions for both of you gentlemen. One is, based off of the pilot, would you continue watching possibly the other 11 episodes of this version of Wallander? Maybe even you're curious enough to go back to the 90s and watch the original Wallander or watch Young Wallander. And then the second question is, we sort of talked about like rebooting this show, maybe with the American version of Kenneth Branagh. Denzel, give me a fucking call, man. I'm worried about you. I haven't heard from you in months, but I'm curious. Do you think this show could be rebooted? Maybe an American version of the show in the same tone? Rich, I'm curious from your perspective. What are your thoughts?
So this is a show, and I really tried to not go in with any particular expectation of a show or, deciding one way or another. I'm actually not going with watching another one. And I'm shocked that I'm saying that because I did really want to like it. And I am still a little bit off put that you don't really have anything to Wallander's character that much that makes me want to tune in again. If I'm getting a protagonist, I want to know the why. I want to know like more than just that, like, they're kind of tormented. They're a little bit like, embattled. That doesn't mean that they're going to be an amazing detective. It just means that all the writer's room is doing is coming up with insane crimes for them to solve and not having any like kind of exciting or fun way to solve them. So I'm going no on that one. I would love to see, and I stupidly did not spend the $3.99 to watch the original Swedish one. And I think if that is a little bit different, I would be interested in seeing that. I think maybe crime of this nature is a little bit more of a draw for a Swedish audience or a British audience because we have violent crimes constantly here. And I think we need characters like Monk. We need characters like the SVU gang who are going to be kitschy and quippy and have like a special power or something like that. This just doesn't have it for me. I'm honestly pretty shocked about it.
Max, what about you?
I'm looking at my liquor cabinet as I film this in my kitchen as I say this, but yeah, I would absolutely watch it. I might need something to comfort me through round 2 of Wallander, but when you begin a series off the bat with self-immolation in your cold open before you hit the credits, when there is this kind of real sense of mystery driving the episode, I could get hooked into it. I also like this. I haven't read Megal's books before, but I did read, Stieg Larsson's Millennium Trilogy. I definitely could see myself getting into more of the show, more of these books. As for it getting remade, I definitely think the popularity is there. This is a pretty universally beloved character now. We also mentioned early on in this episode that the kind of like middle Swedish one that started with a few feature films, then just had original concept ideas by Mankel for its episodes. It wasn't based on the 13 novels. So there's other ideas that weren't even covered in the BBC Branagh version. There's more material there. Or just go rogue, go Hannibal, just find characters that you can steer in new directions. I think that there's always going to be interest in Nordic crime drama, and I could definitely see this finding a home here in America with something new if done right.
The IP is strong. I'll say that. This is the same way with Ladies Number One Detective Agency. IP is there. The IP is strong. It doesn't have to just be this.
Yeah, so I'll finish this off by saying I'm definitely going to give this one more episode, at least. I'm not going to commit to all 12. I also think that this is not a bingeable show, if that makes sense.
No, you are sick. You are absolutely sick. If you heard Jeff say there's 12 episodes, you thought I could knock that out in a weekend, seek help.
Yeah, no,
you're not popping down with a big bag of Swedish fish, or as they just call them, fish there, and watching 6 of these in a row.
Sweden's going to send us a bill because they're just upset with us.
I'm not going to pay it.
We're not paying
it. Yeah. So I genuinely, I think that this is one of those shows where a little goes a long way, and you need to spend time sitting and thinking about it rather than just being like, yeah, fill me up with, non-nutrition, like garbage, if that makes sense. Not that everything you have to watch needs to be sparking joy or needs to be sparking big thoughts, but there's something to be said about a show that has you sit down, think, and then want to wait a little bit before you watch something else. The episodes are long enough that this is basically like a movie, right? Like we are watching these episodes and that continues on. So if you want to treat this like watching one episode, maybe a week or every 2 weeks, yeah, 100%. I think that this is a great show for you if you're looking for something a little bit less long than a movie, but a little bit longer than that 45-minute TV show that you watch every week. As far as rebooting the show, if they're going to do it, don't just use the IP to draw an audience in, if that makes sense. Don't just take... I don't know how good young Wallander is, but I have a feeling...
Lil Wally.
I have a feeling that we just said someone brought in a pilot and they said, this isn't going to draw enough. What if we called him Wallander and got that audience to join in? So make sure that you find that balance between tone that's appropriate for the United States or for a global audience, while also giving respect to the character itself. Because then, yeah, I would love to see something like that thrive in the TV world today, because we don't really have that. And when we get those little pieces and bites, like True Detective sort of things, like people grab onto it and hold on for dear life because it's just so different. Well, that's our flight, gentlemen. And, in case people want to find you two, as well as find the show, where can they find you?
You could take a chance on me on all things social media.
Son of a bitch.
At Maxwell Singh. You can find original sketch comedy from myself and Rich over on TikTok at Dad Wagon Comedy.
Oh, God. You can find me writing and pitching the script for even younger Wallander. You can also find me on Instagram at Damn That's Rich.
Oh, my God. You guys... Mamma Mia, you can find me on...
I didn't want to play your games.
Yeah. You can find me on social media at RunJeffRun. But more importantly, you can find the TV Pilots License, where we're putting out clips as well as schedules, so you can watch the shows before we publish them on social media, as well as YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram at TV Pilots License.
People should do that. I want people to do that. Watch the show, and then, we want to hear your comments on it. This is more than a 3-person conversation.
Yeah, no, we want to hear it. Do you think that the show is worth watching if you watched it? I actually had someone reach out to me, and I know we're wrapping up, but they were like, you gave me a reason to watch a show I've really been wanting to try out. And like, it's like, yeah, fuck yeah. Awesome.
We're literally inspiring binge watching with almost every episode.
I'll be sentimental. That actually means a lot. Like, seriously, if one person reaches out and says, you inspired me to watch a show, or I too did, and I took your suggestion, then it makes all this worthwhile. So thank you.
And what I'll say is, we're putting at the bottom of our polls, if there's a pilot that you want us to watch, make sure to let us know, because we want suggestions. Once International Month is done, I know that there are a couple pilots I'm very excited based off of audience suggestions, and make sure to give us that feedback, because we're happy to do something that has you tuning in. If you do have suggestions and maybe you are a little bit shy, don't want to reach out on the polls, shoot us an email at tvpilotslicense@gmail.com, or you can give us a call, give us a voicemail. We love putting those on the show. They're 213-290-1713. Make sure to watch out for sneak previews of some of our upcoming stuff, and we love hearing from you. Thank you for listening. Your likes, comments, subscribe, they all help the show. But with the plane landed and the seatbelt sign off, we look forward to flying the bright skies of the TV world with you again soon. And until then,
Waterloo.
We did it. Waterloo. Promise